Hi everyone, I'm a holistic counsellor and psychotherapist, and I'm running masterclasses every Monday at 12:30. I am having a little break over Christmas and coming back on the 30th. So today I am doing a replay of self-abandonment because I had a beautiful group with a few people in it where we did a recording around this masterclass, and unfortunately there was an error, and I also forgot to record part of it. So I am redoing this masterclass just on my own with the questions that I received from the participants in the last one. So let's get started. The masterclass today is on self-abandonment. Now, it was quite a popular topic, and especially I believe for women who generationally speaking, we have been taught to submit, to give to the family, to people, to be very generous with our time, our nurturing others, taking care of the family home, and making sure everything is okay on an emotional and a physical level. Now, that's traditionally speaking because we were part of a family dynamic and family system where women stayed at home and men went out and worked. So women needed to just be the caretakers at home. Now, we have evolved since then. We are now stepping more and more into our passions and purposes, and we are working as women. We don't need that as much as we have in the past, the physical kind of resources. We are more now looking at our emotional self, our well-being, nourishing ourselves. So this is a shift in generational traditions, and also a shift for women where we are no longer reliant on a man to survive. Now, I want to also bring the men in this because it's the same concepts around in terms of self-abandonment for men as well. And this does happen on the other end where they feel pressure and responsibility to take care of the family home, to do a job maybe that they don't want to do, to self-abandon their own needs and passions. And that might come more from this tradition around men shouldn't be weak, men shouldn't cry, men shouldn't have emotions. So it's a different dynamic around this. Now, we're not going to go too much into that traditional speaking. It's more around where are we now? And this applies for any gender and non-binary as well, where we start to realize that in order for us to thrive in life, we really need to take care of ourselves. So let's get stuck in. Now, self-abandonment can be on a conscious and a subconscious level. Many of us are doing it on a subconscious level. So in order for us to understand when we're doing it, why we do it, and how we can change the way that we behave so we're no longer self-abandoning, we really need to start to understand our fears around relationship to another. Now, we can consciously know that we stay back from work, we're very generous, we give our time to people, we hold space, we are doing all the time for others, right? We can know that on a conscious level, we know that. On a subconscious level, we may not know why we burn out and give so much to others. We may not know why we self-abandon, and we don't know what our own boundaries and needs are. This is because it has become suppressed and then on a higher scale repressed. Now, what does this actually mean? Now, growing up, if you were in a household, it's a scale. I'll give you one example. If you're in a household where emotions, needs, desires weren't really valued, and you weren't really seen in your individuality, you weren't seen in what you valued, what your strengths are, and your zone of genius. So it was neglected. Maybe you had parents who worked a lot full time, and they didn't have much time to play and caretake you. And at the same time, maybe you had a chaotic household as well. So in that process, your needs and boundaries were not really respected or were not really cultivated. Now let's go further along the scale. What if you grew up in a household where fear-based parenting was the main way to shut you up, to tell you things like kids are meant to be seen, not heard, to put fear in you around any sort of expression, because maybe a mother or father in your family was at capacity. And so any form of discomfort that you created for them, they would yell at you, maybe they would spank you, they could have beaten you. It's on a scale. So depending on the type of punishment that your parents thought was a good idea to control your behavior, to teach you how to behave, this will depend on the severity of your suppression and repression. And I will go into it on a polyvagal sort of polyvagal theory way of explaining it. So it's really important to know that we are not doing this on a conscious level. And in order for us to start to understand ourselves on a deeper level, we really need to uncover belief systems and do this through how we feel in our body and why we keep getting these reoccurring challenges and problems in our lives in regards to work, other humans, our health, whatever the challenge or problem is manifested as. Now, the reason why we need to do this is because if you grew up in a family home where self-expression was not valued, or it was too scary to do that, you would then start to meet your needs in unhealthy ways that can come across as rebellious. It can be lying, it can be manipulation, and that's how we learn to meet our needs. And we carry those qualities and those ways of behaving into our adult life without even realizing that we're doing it. You'll know that this is happening if the reoccurring patterns of conflict, of workplace challenges, of health symptoms are happening. That's where you'll know, okay, I'm not directly meeting my needs. Also, addiction comes in there as well. So just an example of this is like growing up, I wasn't allowed to date. So what I would do is I would say that I'm going to a friend's place, and I wouldn't go to my friend's place. I would actually be going to my boyfriend's place. In that process, I lost friends doing that. And I was also lying. So it's got this icky feeling to it where, you know, if I carried that on into my adulthood, I'd be trying to meet my needs through lies. Many of us do it to try to protect ourselves, but in the process, we push people away as well. So we need to really meet our needs directly as much as possible so we can live more in alignment, attract people that we want to attract around us, and start to flow more in life where we're being nourished and not self-abandoning. So on a nervous system level, it's very interesting. So at the top, I talk about the polyvagal theory, nervous system. When we are in ventral vagal activation, we are calm, connected, grounded, we're feeling good. Maybe we're asked to do something that we really want to do. So we have this excitement, or we've got a little bit of like lightness in it. It's like a yes, there's no doubt, there's no maybes. How's that feel in your body? Like really getting to know those feelings in your body. When we're up the top, what is happening is we can express our boundaries even if we're feeling a little bit of fear. We trust that we can hold solid in ourselves when we're around other people that might challenge us a little. We don't take things personally, like an attack to our personality and who we are. We're more confident in what we do. It doesn't mean we don't have fear. It doesn't mean we don't have times of insecurities. It just means that we are able to express ourselves in a way that helps us to not self-abandon. It helps us to live more in balance and alignment. So if people push us away or create conflict, or belittle us, we are more likely up the top to be able to say, oh, that's on them and that's not my problem. We can distance ourselves from that easier after we get curious and we're willing to have a chat about it. So if you're in fight flight, though, this is where it's a different response to self-abandonment, because what is happening here is we can fear, at first, we can really fear abandonment from another person and losing love. So what can happen in fight flight is we can fight for the love. So focus on doing things for other people. And this could be the same at work. We can focus on working really hard so we don't lose our job. Now, this could be not even the case, but on a subconscious level, we're believing that this will happen if we don't, like we'll lose our job, lose a relationship if we don't fight for it. So we're thinking of ways of how can I behave so I don't get sacked, so people don't leave me. Saying yes from fear of being disliked, sacked, pushed away, seen as bad person, or causing, like, just not wanting to cause conflict. And we're not wanting to, we want to be loved. So feeling anxious after being around someone and justifying their behavior and reason you feel anxious, so there's no disconnection. So you're trying to chase that connection, even if someone's distancing themselves, but you might be justifying it and creating a fantasy around it. That's very much in the fight flight. Now, we all have a default mode that we use to cope growing up. Some of us are in fight flight, use this one, to fight for what we want, defend, argue our case, stand up for ourselves, and at the same time, neglect ourselves in that fight, and actually knowing, is this healthy for me? Is this what I want in a relationship? So we're so hyper focused on being abandoned or losing something that we're actually not looking at it from a place of, does this nourish me? Are my needs being met? This is the typical, in a relationship, the typical anxious attachment who's trying to get an avoidant person to love them. So in that space, I'm abandoning myself. I'm actually emotionally unavailable because I can't see that this person cannot meet my needs, and there's no way in me changing them. But what can happen is we're trying to heal we're trying to heal a relationship from our past, our caregivers, our parents. And the way we're trying to heal that is through finding someone that has similar qualities and then growing together with that person. But what is actually happening is that other person has no desire to grow with you, so you're constantly fighting to get them to grow and be emotionally available. So that's in the fight flight. Now let's talk and speak into the shutdown response. Now, what I've learned from the what I have learned from the work that I've done is that a common thing that can happen is the more, and this is not for everyone, the more severe it was growing up in terms of how you were treated, and if aggression was used to control your behavior, punish you, you may find yourself going into a shutdown. It might not be just aggression, it could be just severe emotional neglect and shaming you when you express yourself. Anytime we were really shamed, neglected emotionally, there is a shutdown response that will happen for us to cope in that space. So to really understand that animals fawn, and what happens is after they've been fighting, so maybe they've been in fight flight, they've been running away from the predator, or they've fought back and they're exhausted. They've got to a point of exhaustion, and so now the only thing they can do is submit, fawn, or freeze. So this is what humans do without even realizing. We can be in almost like a trance state when we do it. So it's a part of us that is shutting down because it feels so unsafe to be in that environment. It feels so stressed that our nervous system starts to shut down. Before this happens, though, we might go into a fawn response. So we're kind of saying, what can I do for you? I want to make this better. And we're looking hyper-focused towards the other person without knowing what our needs are in that moment. We are saying, yes when we might mean no. We might even not be able to voice our opinion in this and just kind of go with the flow because we can't even speak at this point. This is the freeze response that can really happen. We have confusion, so we might still continue moving forward with something with that confusion because we're too scared to speak up and say, hey, I'm confused. I don't really want to do this. We're so scared that we just stay doing the thing that whatever's happening in that environment. So this is really where shutdown can happen with sexual assault, physical, emotional, and that sort of thing. So it's hard for us to speak our boundaries in this place. It's on an autonomic nervous system level. You're not meaning to do this. It happens automatically. So this is so important to know because once you start to get to know yourself and your boundaries and why it's hard for you to express them, it's really important to start reflecting on times where you may have gone into a shutdown, noticing what happens in the body, noticing what happens in the environment, so you can start to create tools and strategies for going into different situations, knowing that the autonomic nervous system sometimes takes over. For example, if I'm very fearful of conflict, I might shut down in a conflict. So before knowing that and knowing my process in that, I can then speak to my partner and say, hey, they might be someone that's a fighter and a defender. That's what happens. We attract the opposite, or the opposite nervous system to us in a way. So they might be a fighter and a defender, and you might shut down in conflict. So there's a really hard thing that happens there because it can feel quite abusive for the person shutting down and quite abusive for the fighter because the fighter and defender doesn't feel seen, heard, or understood by the person shutting down because they can't. They're confused. It's kind of foggy. They're wanting to get away. The flight response is coming very strong. And the fighter is then feeling more and more agitated. So it just creates a worse situation. So if you could know that about yourself and say, okay, I just need space sometimes. I need to I need some space. I need some softness during that time. So when I do this is a signal that I'm starting to shut down. Understanding your shutdown response can be the most beneficial thing. Someone who's in fight flight can actually notice more things. There's more hypervigilance in that. Someone who's in shutdown, freeze, fawn, submit, there's hypervigilance on the person in front of them, but it's not, once we start to shut down and start to numb out and freeze, we can't actually read the situation. Sometimes people dissociate too. So that means I'm no longer in this present moment. I have gone somewhere else. So that is an indicator that I can't be with you. I can't be present with you. People with who grew up with a lot of violence, this can be your default. People who grew up with a lot of emotional neglect or abuse in the sense of being bullied or shamed, this can be your default. So it's starting to ask yourself questions like, how does a yes feel? How does a no feel in my body? If I don't want to do something, how does that feel in my body? If I do want to do something, how does that feel? How does my body respond to being scared? What does it feel like when I'm scared? When I'm in fight, flight, or when I'm in shutdown? And also, what is it like for me in conflict? How do I respond when I'm in conflict? When people are aggressive, what happens for me? Do I shut down and want to become small, or do I defend and fight back? What happens in my heart rate? What happens in my body? So starting to understand this about ourselves, that is how you can get to a point where you say, when am I self-abandoning? So it's a real uncovering. It's like a self-discovery process. Okay. For example, we project how others will treat us through our own unspoken expectation. Okay, so the example of this is coming in because what can happen is we can self-abandon without realizing we're doing it because we want an outcome from someone. So I might treat someone really well because I want them to like me. that can be a form of self-abandonment. It's because I'm doing it out of fear. I'm doing it out of, I don't feel like a good person, but when I do things for others, then I feel better. So it's this external exchange. It's really important for us to understand what our motives are behind doing for others. Because if we've got this expectation, we haven't communicated it, they don't know what that is, and then they treat us poorly, we then say, well, look, I did all this stuff for them, and now look at how they're treating me. But they may have never given us any indicator that they were going to reciprocate, or there was going to be an even energy exchange there. We expect people to treat us like we treat others, and that's this projection that we have. It's a projection because I might be a really generous person because that's something that I grew up with that made me feel good. Someone else might be in scarcity mode and they're not that generous maybe with things, but they're really generous with their time. So it varies from person to person. And also some people are dealing with their own wounding, their own trauma, their own stuff, so they don't even have capacity to be empathetic or to want to connect. So we've got to really understand what is our motives, what are our expectations, and what are we not voicing to people? Are we allowing people to show us first that, you know, there's someone that we can be generous with and feel like they would give back? So if I do nice things for people, they will return the favor. This is the kind of thing, right, that we do. If I say yes to doing this activity that I don't like, but they like, they will do the same for me. So this is a really interesting one because it's like that if I'm doing something I don't want to do and I don't like, I'm self-abandoning in that moment. If I'm consciously doing it, it's totally different ballgame. So consciously doing it means I know that I don't like this and it's going to take up some of my energy. And I'm doing it for you because it makes me feel good when I do things for you. So it's like I know my motives. After this, though, what I think I'll need is to do this, and that, like whatever it is to balance you out. And also knowing that, communicating that to the person, look, I really don't like doing this, but I love doing things for you. So I'm willing to do it this time, but what I need in return, or communicate your expectations. So maybe when I do something that you don't like, I would love for you to come along to this thing with me. Knowing that this is an expectation. Sometimes we hide those because we're scared of being vulnerable and expressing. You know, I shouldn't have to tell people what I need. We often think that they should read our minds because we're so good at meeting their needs. This is another expectation, another projection onto what we believe they should be doing for us. Why we try to complete, we try to complete these unhealed processes, as I mentioned before. So we will repeat these patterns with people that cannot meet us where we want to be met. And in that process, we self-abandon because it's the norm. It's what was familiar growing up. So when we start to shift these things within us and get to understand our boundaries and standards in relationship, in career, we start to become more confident to stick by those standards and boundaries, because what we're doing is we are changing our life. We're changing the way that we're showing up in the world, and we're no longer taking what we used to take as children as the way it should be. We're starting to understand what healthy communication is, what healthy relating is. It's something that we may not have had growing up. If we're giving from a place of scarcity, that is self-abandonment, because scarcity means that I am feeling fear of something and worry, and I'm giving from a place of thinking I'm going to get something in return. And often when we do that, it does not work. So I might give or create something for someone. I might give them money. I might give them my time, and I'm in a very fight, flighty, or shut down place. And there's an expectation and need that I'm trying to get met, but I'm not doing it in a direct way. So really important to take care of ourselves first and get us back up top of the ladder where we're in ventral vagal, so then we can really show up for people in not a scarcity space. So yeah, as I say, stress and survival mode amplifies self-abandonment. If I am in survival mode, I will be desperate. So if I'm in survival mode, my fantasies of someone, I won't see the red flags. I won't see the red flags of a career. I will justify it all in my mind. And when I'm justifying in my mind, I'm abandoning my body and the body's reaction and response to things. It's a new way of being. So this is such a new way of being because it's changing our coping mechanism. It's going directly for what we want. It's learning how to be vulnerable and express ourselves because in the past it wasn't safe to do that. So now we're learning how to move with the fear and showing ourselves how we can do it in healthy ways. So subconscious fear of consequences, that's why we self-abandon. Belief systems that we've created when you were young, traumatic experiences that have reinforced these belief systems. When I share, when I'm vulnerable, I might be shut down. When I give to someone, I might be abandoned. When I am we're reinforcing these belief systems. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We create the reality we fear by trying to meet our needs in manipulative and indirect ways. When you've created something that you feared, that is a really good indicator that you didn't go directly for your needs and you thought you could get them met by someone else, something else, and in the end, it didn't work out. When something doesn't feel right, slow down, become curious, go in. So often we talk ourselves out of this, and humans are so intuitive. We know when there's missing information, something's not quite right. Our body will feel, we possibly go into a fear response. So an anxious feeling in us is something not right. I feel an unease. I feel missing information. Maybe we start to shut down in the nervous system. These are all signals to go in, slow down. Your body's going to want to do, your being's going to want to do the opposite. When we're self-abandoning, we're on the go, we're doing for others, we're doing for our career, we're doing for all these things, and the body actually wants the opposite, so you can hear what's happening. To identify, it's so important to identify healthy relationships. If it's something you weren't taught growing up, if you grew up in chaos, if you grew up in emotional neglect and immaturity, learning what is healthy relationships, what are healthy communication skills, what is healthy behavior, and really sticking by those standards. The way that your body signals this is it will actually go into a survival fear response when things are unhealthy. What we tend to do, so we won't be able to sleep, we'll get anxious, more anxious and depressed. This is very common in relationships with others, in careers that we're maybe in, or if we're not moving in alignment, we'll increase our depression, increase our anxiety, increase health symptoms because we're not in alignment. And what we're doing is listening to our brain, and the fears and thought processes that come up here are very different to what your body has to actually tell you, the inner wisdom of your body. We feel into our body and learn the language and signals of alignment. This is what I do in my holistic practice. And this is a tool you can take with you for the rest of your life to know when something's a yes, to know when something's a no, to feel it, but also to honor that response, because we work through the belief systems that are there that are causing you to ignore your body's wisdom. We reflect and learn from past experiences of self-abandonment. That's how you can start to pick it up before you self-abandon, because sometimes when we're in it, we cannot pick up that we're self-abandoning. So we need to know, where's my default mode on the autonomic nervous system when I'm stressed? Do I go into fight, flight, or do I go into shutdown? So a good question would be, when someone is getting upset with me, aggressive, or we're in conflict, do I fight and defend? Or do I flee and shut down? Or do I just shut down in that moment? Knowing your response in that can be very beneficial, because then you can start to plan, if I was in conflict with someone, this is how my body will respond, and this is what I'll do in future. So learn what your boundaries are, your needs, and communicating them. This is a practice I do with my clients because it's been so unsafe in the past to express needs. It can bring terror on in the body, as far as terror to express a need and boundary, because you've been so, if you're in that space where you just can't even express it, you've suppressed and repressed your needs and boundaries so severely because your caregivers or parents shamed you or punished you very severely when you wanted to express yourself. This is where gaslighting can come in too. So our body is like, it is not safe to have boundaries, needs, and express them. We've got to recondition it in a safe way. We've got to rewire that in a safe way. If you would like to work with me, I have a few packages at the moment. You can also do one-on-one, which is on the right. On the left, I've got my packages. I would love to work with you through those. And also on the right, I have my one-on-one sessions. I do single sessions, but what I recommend is to buy 3 or a 6-pack, get to know me, let's work together. Therapy is all about the unfolding, and it's a long-term relationship with me as well. I do relational therapy. So if you've had, which many of us have had, trauma in relationship to another, then relational therapy is super important because it's the first time you might have a relationship with someone that has healthy boundaries, healthy communication and needs, and can meet you in this way where we can work through tension, we can work through anything that comes up, because that's what I am really passionate about. So just to finish off, I had questions come in from my last group, and I would like to cover those questions now because the recording didn't work. So let's go into it. I've already answered one of them. Is like, how do you know when you're self-abandoning? As I said, get to know when you're in conflict or someone's being aggressive or upset with you, what happens in your being. Do you fight, defend, argue with them, or flight? Do you get out of there, run away? Do you shut down? Does your nervous system shut down to a point where you like get confused? You start to want to be really small. Start to understand the feelings of that. So I would say while you're self-abandoning, when you get to know your feelings, then you'll be able to start to understand when you're doing it in the moment. Someone in fight flight could probably feel it more so than someone in shutdown. I know for me, I get frustrated and defend. So that means there's a unmet need or a boundary or something I'm upset about with the other person, and it's important for me to get curious about that. So I take a few deep breaths in and out and get curious and ask them what's happening for them, because the reason why I get angry and defend is because I'm taking it personally. So if I get curious, then I can understand what's happening for the other person. Co-creation. We are never the ones always to blame. It's not 100% on us. If someone's upset with us, it's a co-creation. So becoming curious with that is a really great way to understand what's deeply happening with that person and then what's deeply happening with ourselves. When you're in shutdown, you'll have a hangover effect after you have self-abandoned. What will happen is once you've left maybe work or you've left the person you're with, you'll start to feel this anxiety in you. You'll be coming back up the ladder, and you'll start to feel angry, frustrated, resentful. Resentment is a really good indicator that there's been a boundary that you weren't able to express. Once you start to understand this, you can reflect and go, where in that moment was I self-abandoning? What was happening for me? So you can start to reflect on it. That will happen for a bit until you start to feel your process, notice your process. Then you will start to understand it in the moment. Oh, I'm realizing I'm starting to shut down because I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling like I want to be small. So you can start to practice in the moment. So that's one of the questions. I've got another. Okay, so how do I bring something up after I've self-abandoned? So maybe you've been speaking to someone. So this client was speaking to their mother and found that their mother dismissed them and brushed them off. And this is a common thing that has been happening since she was young. And it's quite, it has quite like a severe response for her in her nervous system. So she said, this happened again. How can I approach her about this? And my answer to that is, so great that she knows her process. We actually did a session on this. And then I would, if I was upset with being dismissed or minimized, devalued, belittled, whatever it is, right? I would, and I felt like I wanted to repair and reconnect with this person, I would firstly ask them for permission. I wouldn't say it like that, but I would ask them for permission. So is it okay if we have a chat about what we were discussing yesterday? When we were talking yesterday, I noticed that I was speaking about this topic and you became really sort of a little bit sort of dismissive when we were talking about that topic. I'm just wondering, was there something that I said that upset you, or, you know, was there a discomfort in that for you? So being able to get curious from a grounded place, really ideal so the other person doesn't feel attacked. Also, when you ask for permission, there will be either a, yeah, absolutely, let's talk about it. Or it could be like a, oh, well, what do you mean? Why do you want to talk about it? So that's resistance that comes up. We want to be able to address the resistance before moving forward, because already the resistance is showing that I'm in a bit of a defense mode. I'm a bit closed. So if I get that, I would say, oh, I'm noticing that you maybe don't want to talk about it. That's okay. And so just really meeting that resistance when it comes up. So that's how I would approach someone that I care about and I want to reconnect with and maybe build a relationship with, is I would be in that moment, we're teaching that person how to be vulnerable, because it's a vulnerable space to be in when we do that. So how do we know that the difference between generous, giving, being nice and kind, and self-abandoning? So I have spoken about this where I talked about the expectation, knowing your motivation underneath why you're doing those things. Is it, if I'm doing it to be liked, to belong, what I'm saying to myself is I have to do things for others to be valued. This is a belief system that was probably created when you were younger and you were told you're a good girl because you were doing things for everyone else. You were being a good girl because you were cleaning or cooking or helping mum out to make the beds, whatever it is. So when you did things for others, you received love and connection. So as an adult, the association is, and the conditioning is, for me to be loved, I have to do things for others. What we want to start to do is come from a place of, if I am loved as I am without doing for others, who would I be in relationship to another person? How would I act? If I didn't feel like I had to do things for them, who would I be? How would I act? What do I love doing? What excites me? What nourishes me? And then bringing people along with you on that journey, rather than, if I do this for them, they will like me and that will make me feel better. If it's more, if I say I'm doing surf lessons, if I do surf lessons and I start to meet people who like surfing, and then we go surfing together, there's a mutual enjoyment there. Whereas I don't need to be someone, do something that I'm not to be loved and connected with. I'm doing something that I love, and the connection follows because that other person loves that thing too. And then we relate on something that we really enjoy doing and connect over that. So that's what I would suggest. So if you're doing things for other people to be liked and loved, I would say do things for yourself and surround yourself with people who like and enjoy the same things, because then you're no longer doing for them, you're doing it for yourself, and the byproduct is you're enjoying yourself, you're connecting with other people, you're at the top of the ladder, you're social, you're in a curious space. So that alone is valuable. You don't have to be doing to be valued. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed this masterclass. Apologies for the people who I had in my class, and we covered some great stuff. I'm hoping that everything we covered in the first one I've covered in this session. If you'd like to work with me, you can contact me through my website, and I would absolutely love to work with you, especially in the new year.